welcome to the Unconventional Intentional Homemaking podcast. Today we are going to be talking about habit stacking, and if you don't know what on earth that is or why it's important to homemaking, don't worry, we'll get there. But first, my name is Issa and this is my wife Blaise.
Hello.
We should get started.
Yes. That sounds like a plan to me.
So what is habit stacking? Go.
Habit stacking is when you form a relationship between actions, particularly when you have one action that leads into another action that shouldn't necessarily flow into each other, and you form a mental relationship. So when you do one thing, you then it feels wrong to not do the other thing.
So I guess as an example, we could talk about your exercise habit stacking. Just as an example of what it might look like in a real situation.
So I have habit stacked when I'm working from home, when I go and make myself a cup of tea, I do a micro exercise.
Yeah.
So that's just picking up some weights, doing some stretching, just while the kettle is boiling. I'm away from the computer anyway. So it now to the point where if I make myself a cup of tea, if I'm not doing some exercise, it feels wrong. And I think that a lot of people use this naturally in their day-to-day lives without realising it. So for example, you get up and you brush your teeth. If you get up and you forget to brush your teeth,
it feels wrong.
It feels wrong, it feels weird.
And that's like a really good example of how that works in like a more personal way. But I guess I want to explore today how that could work in like a homemaking way, because I am not very good at habits. I am not very good at habit stacking. I'm not very good at routines in general, so help me.
It's a good thing I am, because you have trained me very well in some areas.
I mean, I say I'm not very good at routines. We do have routines we stick to religiously, and my day doesn't work if I don't do them. I'm talking specifically about our morning and evening routines in particular.
But I wouldn't necessarily say they're habits stacked rather than routines. So I would say that just having a routine isn't quite the same as a habit stack.
No, but you just mentioned that a minute ago, like getting up and brushing your teeth. For me, my morning routine is the same. Like I get up, brush my teeth, we walk the dog, and then the rest of the routine follows on from there. It is a habit that is stacked
and it
on
has
the basis of getting up.
Yeah, and it has now become stacked because if you don't do one of those, it feels wrong. Yeah. Whereas you've now trained me really well to do things like when I'm leaving a room, I check and see if there's anything to take with me. Like the concept of don't leave a room empty-handed.
Yeah, that's a form of habit stacking.
When I go into the kitchen, I now look and see if anything needs doing, if the sides need wiping. These are things that I didn't do before.
No, I know. So I have a policy of the kitchen in particular, that if I go into the kitchen, I always find something to do.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if it's obvious, I will find something to do, because there's always something.
And the bathroom as well, like the swish and swipe, I'll go into the bathroom and it's now a habit to see if something needs doing.
Yeah, and a lot of these were these were formed by using the Fly Lady system, which is something we talk about quite a bit, because it's formed the basis of our daily routines. And the purpose of, when you start the Fly Lady system, the purpose of it is to build those habits. So she encourages you to do the baby step routine, which is about habit stacking for the full 30 days so that you can form a habit.
What we do to make this really intentional is not only have we intentionally stacked habits, but we've then made sure that the environment or the tools are there. Like when I walk into the kitchen and I see it needs wiping, the cloth is right there, the spray is right there.
Yeah.
Like it's not hidden away.
No.
It's like they're right there, and then you give it a swipe, and then there's a place for the dirty cloth to go.
Because we don't use kitchen towel or disposables anymore. We just have a whole bunch of microfibres that we wash regularly.
Yes.
We basically use them like we would kitchen towel.
Yeah, so like
one
literally
use.
One use, wipe it. You don't have to worry about a dirty rag being on the side, and you don't know if it's clean enough to use or not. Even if it's just wiped to the side and it's quite clean, straight in the wash. We've got 40 of them.
Yeah. And then about once a week I do a full microfiber wash.
Yeah, and we've got some of those live upstairs for the bathroom. The bathroom has the same principle in it.
Yeah.
So I think going back to things like the routines, as you said, like the Fly Lady, it was about building those habits.
Yeah, and I did the 30 days, you didn't particularly, so you probably don't know what they're like the same, but basically you start with one thing on day one. Day 2 you add 2 things in, and by the end of it you've built up a full morning, evening and afternoon routine.
I'm sorry, I've just got a partridge in a pear tree in my head now.
It is a bit like that, except there's a lot of reading websites. And
I think the key point though is it's the intentional bit. It's this is what I want to achieve and this is how we're going to achieve that, and then make that a habit.
Yes. So for me, like following the Fly Lady routines has been quite big, because I have never been able to stick to a routine in my life before. Particularly when it's around boring tasks like housework and stuff. I've just never been able to do it, and it's only the last couple of years that I've managed to do it, and that's through the Fly Lady. But that's because habits and forming them don't come easy to me, not at all.
They do much more to me.
No, you're very routine focused.
Very routine focused. I think that's like, this is going to be easier for some people and harder for others, and that's okay.
Yeah. Whereas for me, forming a habit is like something I have to work at every day. If I skip a day or two, then that's it, habit's gone.
Yeah, whereas I'm much more, if I don't do it for a day, oh that's fine, I'll get back on it tomorrow.
Yeah. Whereas I'm all or nothing. It's either happening or it isn't. There's no in between. That might be somewhat down to my inability to stick to things long term. Like it takes 30 days to form a habit. I rarely make it that far.
I mean, there are ways that people can help. Like if you do intentional journaling, so like bullet journaling or something similar, there's a whole raft of ways to track habits while you're forming them, and cross off each day and give yourself a little dance and a little cheer for doing it, little celebration. You always look at me a little bit crazy, like I'm a bit cray-cray when I'm doing that.
No, I was more thinking that that's great if you are a type of person that journals daily.
Oh yeah, so if you happen to be the type of person who journals daily, that is an option that you can have of tracking whether you've done something or not.
Yeah, I don't know what it is about me, but I just really struggle with it. I just can't.
So I think particularly for you, something that's very motivational is when you don't do it and then it really affects you, and then you're like, oh yeah, that's why we do this. So I think having habits that matter.
Yeah, I guess that's quite an important aspect of it. If the habit doesn't matter, then what's the point? Why are you wasting your time?
Yeah.
It's got to be something that matters. So one aspect of the Fly Lady I'm not very good at is shining my sink, which is something that she wants you to do daily. Now we always give our sink a clean, but we don't put the effort in that Fly Lady recommends.
I think another one that she says is to always put your shoes on, wear your shoes around the house.
Yeah, I don't do that.
Yeah, because to us that doesn't really work.
It doesn't make a difference, particularly because we have very intentional days and times when we leave the house. We don't actually need to be at any moment ready to leave the house.
No, and when we do, we've again intentionally put things in place. There is a place for shoes by the front door, there's a place for shoes at the back door.
There is.
And there's shoes there specifically.
Yeah, so if we need to go into the garden, there's shoes there available. We've made that as easy as we can. So we don't have to wear shoes in the house, because I like not wearing shoes in the house.
Yeah, I don't like shoes. I'd say another thing with habit stacking is some habit stacks are not necessarily going to happen all of the time. So some will be daily, some will be weekly, some will be ad hoc.
I think they're all kind of situational, isn't it? Sort of the idea of them is that they're dependent on a thing that happens, and when that thing happens, then the rest of it kicks into gear.
Yeah, and so it's almost like you're giving yourself triggering events to then be like, oh, and if this, then that. So one is, you know, when I do meander into the office at work.
Occasionally.
When I leave, I let you know.
Yes, so when I get that notification, that kind of kicks my brain into gear a little bit, because I know how long it's going to take you to get home. Then that gives me a really good baseline for what I need to get done before you get home. So it means I need to stop doing whatever I'm doing, which is usually editing a video, and start dinner, start doing my afternoon routine. That notification actually is quite key.
I mean, the important thing to this is you start prepping for my return.
My brain's gone, oh no, I need to get some stuff done.
Get everything done before the person comes home and messes everything up.
Yeah.
So that's more ad hoc because I don't have specific dates I go into the office anymore.
No, but that is a habit stack, but it's an unintentional one. I did not plan for that. I did not intentionally do that. That just happened naturally, that one.
Not all of these are going to be proper planned and intentional.
Yeah, but where possible, it's probably better if you are intentional about it, is because I've just fallen into that habit, but that's not necessarily me doing things in the best way possible. That's not me intentionally working out whether that's the best way to get those chores done. It's always me going into panic mode of, oh, there's no dinner on yet.
And the flip side to that is if the triggering event doesn't happen. I mean, with my routines, like a triggering event not happening can really mess up my day.
Oh yeah, like you really stopped exercising for a while because you weren't making cups of tea, you were having cold drinks.
Yeah, so I've actually had to change what I was stacking. So instead of it being making a cup of coffee or making a cup of tea during winter, which I can go back into when the weather is colder, but during summer, that's much more about, you know, I then have a big drink of water, which doesn't need refilling as often. So then it's more having reminders about either time or when I need to go to the toilet. Or when I'm changing tasks. So it's almost like I now have 3 points when I consider doing the exercise and stacking it in other ways. But because I have the habit with making my drink, there is still that underlying, oh, I need to do my exercise at some point.
So we've talked about this quite a bit, but what's the actual purpose, would you say? Like, how is it beneficial to habit stack in relation to homemaking? Like, what situation is that even useful?
So it's definitely those little things that we've trained of not leaving the room with an empty hand. Progress, not perfection. Like pick something up and you don't have to take it to your end goal, but move it closer to where it needs to be. So a lot of stuff will end up on the stairs to go up and down.
Yeah, so I have a thing is that because when groceries arrive, if we get groceries delivered, I will move anything that needs to go upstairs to the stairs. But then I have a rule for the rest of the day that each time I go upstairs, I have to take something with me.
So yeah, and it's all those micro habits that we've intentionally put in place and then stacked to events. And I think actually surprisingly that makes the house run so much smoother, particularly when it's the whole household that does that.
Yeah.
Like it's not just left to you to move things from room to room. It's not just left to you to swish and swipe the bathroom or to give the kitchen a clean. Like I do that too. And if you can train the whole household to do that, that would make the whole house just run so much better.
It's also if you can keep on top of those little things, like the little day-to-day things, like putting something away or giving the bathroom a quick wipe or putting something away in the kitchen. Like if you can keep on top of those, it's kind of that tidy as you go mentality, which I am awful at. You're not very good at it either. That if you can habit stack those things, then it makes the rest of the house just run so much nicer.
Yeah.
And the cleaning is so much less overwhelming because you're not having to tidy before you start cleaning.
Yeah. So I think that what's interesting is I have habit stacked that in the kitchen. So if I go in the kitchen, I look for something to do. Like when going into the bedroom, I don't have that association.
No, you don't have it so much in here either.
So in the living room, it's when I'm exiting that I'll look to see if anything needs moving.
Allegedly.
So yeah, it's also interesting to see how the rules can be subtly different.
Yeah, and how you have to almost make a plan for what you want to achieve and then work out how you're going to achieve that. So for us, we talk about it quite a lot because we're really quite proud of this one, but our cleaning cloths, they make the world of difference. It was like an epiphany one day when we were like, we could just get, let's say 100 cleaning cloths and use them like kitchen towel.
But wash them.
It was like, but it was game changing for us because suddenly we could clean the kitchen, or suddenly we could keep the kitchen clean all of the time.
Yeah.
Because there was always a cloth available.
Yeah, and you don't have to question, oh, has this had meat juice on it, or is this okay to wipe this down with? Having to come and check with you what was okay to use different things for.
Yeah, it's been surprisingly life changing. And all because we treat them like they're disposable even when they're not.
We treat them as once-use items that then go in the wash.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's little things, and that would not have happened if we hadn't stopped and thought about
the problem,
the problem and the whole.
Yeah.
And identifying.
I think that one came out of a conversation of you saying, I want to help in the kitchen, but I don't have the things available to do so. So we were like, okay, well, we'll make the things available.
And that particularly with your alleged ADHD.
Is that how we're describing it now?
You're not quite proven ADHD. You just don't have your certificate yet.
Yeah.
And any slight barrier between you and a task means that task is not happening.
No. Which is why we also have multiple vacuums in the house.
Yes.
We have an upstairs one and a downstairs one, not because it's difficult to move from place to place, but because it's easier to not have to move them from place to place.
Although one day we might have a shared one.
We might get a cordless one day.
A cordless one day. Ideally, maybe 2 cordless ones, one for upstairs and one for downstairs.
We'll get 2 cordless hoovers one day.
Let's start with one and see how we go.
But we made the choice to have two hoovers.
And then once we've got that, we can then have a think about what habits we might want to stack with that.
Yeah.
So when do we want to encourage ourselves to pick up the vacuum and vacuum, or do we want to keep it to a specific day? Like what's best to do that with?
Yeah, and we'll probably have to wait and see till we have it. Because I'm hoping that it will make actually quite another thing that will make quite a big difference to us. Because we have pets, we have a lot of pet hair, and sweeping daily is on my task. I'm actually hoping a cordless hoover will make that so much easier.
And there'll probably be a whole video on just how much life-changing a cordless vacuum will be, so keep an eye out for that one.
We make the most exciting content. So those are just a couple of the examples that we have habit stacked. There are so many other things that you could include, like dealing with your laundry, like making it a habit to, when you get in or when you get out of the shower, immediately put your things in the laundry. Or
if you've got kids, make sure that like when they come home they have a particular place for their shoes, for their bag, and for any to-do lists. So there's some people who have what they call like stations,
like launchpad type things.
Launchpad type stations, like a place where they come home and everything has a place to then be dealt with, and then that's a habit to enforce for them when they come in.
Shoes away, bags away.
Shoes away, bags away.
Any letters that need signing.
Yeah, in the right place to, and then you have to have the habit of checking that, and that becomes a whole thing. But without setting up those spaces, that habit can't be formed.
Yeah, so we have set up things like that where we've got clutter catchers, is what we call them, in places where we tend to dump mail or that sort of thing. Any place that tends to gather clutter, we basically put a box to put the clutter in.
And then you might not have noticed, but you probably have, that I don't actually have a habit to empty those.
No, I had noticed. I had noticed.
So they just get full, and then stuff happens, and then it magically empties itself, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. So another good place for like habit stacking is probably at those obvious points of the day when something happens, like when you get up in the morning, or as you're going to bed, or as you finish a meal. those points in the day where things stay the same.
And especially things that happen repetitively. So yeah, once you finished a meal, wash up or put it in the dishwasher like straight away.
Yeah.
Like that can make.
I've trained you well on that now as well.
Yeah, that makes such a difference. Even to the point where you stick stuff on the side, and then I will come along and put it in the dishwasher eventually.
Yeah, and at bedtime we kind of now both have the habit of prepping ourselves for the next day. So we'll lay out our clothes, we'll pack our bag, or whatever we need to do for the next day.
And all of these little things add up to a home that's less stressful. Like everything has a time and a place because we've given everything a time and a place, including our habits.
Yeah.
And it just makes everything like just run so much more smoothly.
It does. Our house is a lot less stressful than it used to be because we're not running around looking for things. We're not getting to the end of the day and the kitchen's overwhelming.
Despite the irony is that we're probably doing more things.
Yeah.
Like we're doing more cleaning, we're doing more habits, we're doing more stuff, but it doesn't feel so overwhelming, it doesn't feel so stressful.
I think what this might be is a way of tricking someone who isn't a typical clean as you go type person into becoming a bit of a clean as you go type person.
and I'm definitely evidence that it can work.
Me too, because I am not a clean as you go. I definitely didn't used to be. I'm much more so now than I ever have been before because we've made it easy to do.
Yeah. And these things do take time. And start like the Fly Lady does. Like she starts with one thing and then builds up and builds up and builds up so that you're not on day one trying to form 30 habits.
Yeah, on day one you're just doing one.
And by the end of it you've got 30 of them, but yeah, add them slower. That's fine. Like
yeah.
Like add them at a reasonable pace. Like this has taken years.
Yeah, we've taken years to get to where we are now, and we are far from perfect. There are so many things that we could be better at. Probably me in particular, because I fall out of routines and habits very, very quickly.
Well, you have a brain that fights against anything being normalised.
I'm just not normal.
and then you're like, nope, I want it different. So yeah, occasionally we'll then have to shake these habits up just to make them feel novel for you.
Yeah, or take a break or whatever. But I think that's the key to anything, is always make sure that your habits are working for you. And if they're not, then it's time to change them. That's the intentional bit.
It is the intentional way. And that reviewing bit and stopping and thinking.
Yeah, because once you've formed a habit, that doesn't mean it's going to serve you forever.
No.
At all. And we do need to make allowances for ourselves to change. And for life to change. And seasons of life change.
I would say though that they might feel really, really small. Like these are tiny, tiny little things, but boy do they add up. I mean, so I've now been doing my micro exercises for a year and it's really made a difference. And yeah, just those little things that it really stacks up. And by the time you've formed all of these little micro habits, like, yeah, it makes a big difference. I'm not quite sure how else I can emphasise just how much of a difference this makes over time.
But we also do have to recognise that not everybody forms habits easily. Not everyone can. We all have our abilities, our disabilities, our difficulties. And not everyone can work the same way. And the trick is to find a way that works for you. For us, forming lots of little habits has worked wonders. Yeah. For others, it may not.
And while you're forming them, it is that self-compassion, those, yeah, if you succeed in doing something while you're still forming those habits, you know, make sure you're recognising that. Like for me, doing my little happy dance really helps. I've got my little happy dance. And that just makes me feel like I've done a micro celebration for a micro habit for something that I've succeeded in, and that makes me happy.
I'll just tell you, and you can happy dance for me.
I can happy dance for you. I can be your little cheerleader and do my little happy dance for you with my little flags. Another thing to consider is making sure that the habits are age appropriate for whoever you're helping. If they're habits that the family are working on, then making sure they're age appropriate, which is not a problem that we have because, you know.
I don't know.
I don't know, being very, very much middle-aged now, there are certain habits that maybe we shouldn't be stacking.
Yeah.
But getting those habits in early with children can also make quite a difference.
Yeah, I don't think I had a lot of that as a child. Like, I don't think my parents quite knew how to make me form habits.
No, particularly not for you. You being the particular child that you would have been.
Yeah, it just didn't come easy to me, and I think that's okay to recognise that for some people it doesn't. Whereas you and your boarding school experience, you probably had a whole ton of habit stacking done as a kid.
I didn't even realise, and like, yeah, everything was routine. I lived my life to the bell. So, yeah.
And you would have had so many micro things that you had to do, like when the bell rang, or when you finished a meal, or those sorts of things. You probably had a whole bunch of rules in place that were essentially just habits.
Yeah, that rules that then turn into habits. Like, yeah, when you finish your meal, you take your plate to the kitchen and then you deal with it. Like, how much of this is routines, how much of this is habits, how much of this is habit stacking. Like, I think there's an awful lot of crossover and lines between it all.
So rather than habits, I work best, I think, with a set of routines that I mostly stick to.
Yeah, and I think that, like, having a combination, like doing some routine, some habit stacking, and some things, like, yeah, you want a blended approach for the best outcomes.
So I guess to summarise, what we're saying is small changes can make fundamental change in your life, and those habits can be formed for personal reasons, for a household, cleaning, personal tasks, whatever it is that your goal or intention is to achieve. Work out how you can do it a little bit easier. Make it a habit, but make it as easy as possible to form that habit.
Yeah, and I think that by linking a habit that you want to form with an action you already take means
really
that habit has a time and a place to happen.
Yeah, so it's much easier to form if you attach it to something else.
Yeah.
Like making a cup of tea. Like for you, that's make a cup of tea, do some exercise. For someone else, it might be make a cup of tea, give the kitchen a quick tidy.
Yeah.
It's depending on situational, depending on what you are, where you are.
Yeah, particularly just an event that you I think that's the key thing. Link something that you already do to something that you want to do.
So maybe I'll give it a go, see if I can get better at it.
And then the whole planning for success. So once you're like, this is what I want to achieve, and you're like, how best to achieve that? What do I need in place? What tools do I need? What things do I need? What do I need accessible to make it as easy to do as you can at the time?
Yeah, and then expect to struggle for 30 days until it forms a habit.
Oh, and then when you don't do it for any reason, so like making a cup of tea just before going into a meeting when I then don't have time to do my micro exercise, it then feels wrong. That's a whole messes with your head so much.
Yeah. But anyway, I think that's a good place for us to end. Thank you so much for listening. Do you have any thoughts on habits or habit stacking? What habits have you formed?
Or some suggestions that other people might enjoy.
Yeah, or some suggestions that we can try. And if you want to hear more, we have so many more thoughts on homemaking, particularly on intentional homemaking. So subscribe or follow wherever you listen to your podcasts. And we hope you have a lovely day, and we will speak to you again soon.
Thank you for listening.
Bye bye.